Welcome everyone to Resilient Culture. We have just shy of an hour and a half to talk about how the arts and culture and community and society can survive this very strange pandemic year with all the costs it has wrought upon us, not just culturally and socially, but also financially, in terms of mental health, in terms of all age groups and all sectors of society. We have an amazing range of speakers who will all be speaking for 5 minutes or so or less. We will be watching the clock as we go along. We do have to finish by 7:30. We have a very exciting range of speakers. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Everyone has prepped. This isn't just a sort of kicking back, let's just say our thoughts meeting. Everyone has a little item they want to say, and the theme that unifies everything is resilient culture. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to Countess Elizabeth Howe for joining us. Elizabeth Howe is to become Lord Lieutenant for Buckinghamshire at the end of the month. Very, very, very close. Thank you so much, Andrew Farncombe, for being here. And thank you also to Andrew Boswell, the Vice Lord Lieutenant for Buckinghamshire and founder and CEO of the MK Investors Group. We want to open with a great celebration, which is the launch of an online gallery. And for that, we have Mushab Bora, who's going to talk us through the online gallery and how it can pull us all together in times of resilient culture, but a pandemic at the same time.
So as we go through, and the link was, obviously this will be shared, there's even, I'll talk over this, videos from some of our events as well that you can go and watch through. So as you get close to some of these pieces, they'll turn into videos as well, which is pretty cool. So we'll do it that way. So there is a description of what the gallery is for. We've seen artists, poets, writers and activists and young people responding to the pandemic in creative ways. And then we've tried to, we held a number of events to bring all of these diverse communities together. And then we've used this gallery to showcase images from those events and the work of the artists that attended those events. That's the idea behind it. And it's a 3D gallery, so you walk around as if it's a normal gallery. And we've also featured, one of the big things that MKIAC does is features the work of school kids. So interspersed with kind of professional artists is poetry and writing from school children itself. And one of the things that, for example, earlier on this year, one of the events that MKIAC did was a digital light event at the Bletchley Park. So on the left here was some artwork by school kids at Shenley Brook School. And that turned into this, which was projected onto an installation at Bletchley Park. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of diversity in how we've used artwork across the different projects that we do. And again, this is another from, this is one of the films that are there. So I'd encourage, I don't want to go hijack this entire meeting with just the gallery, but there is lots of artwork here from various themes as well that we've had in the event so far. And finally, there's a section here which is what I call the green room, where it's featuring art from a lot of the artists who are here today, actually, in the event. So if they want to talk us through any of it, they can later on. But we featured that as well, just so that it's all there. And it was, I mean, this is an example of British artist Soraya Saeed, and artists have had to adapt how they do things in the in lockdown, and they've had to digitize their work and do things in a very innovative way. And some have done it, you know, and adapted to this new way of working much better than others. We wanted to showcase some of that work as well. So that's it. That's all I have to say about the gallery. We'll share the link later, but it's quite a good cross section of the different activities that we've been doing over the summer.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Sorry for launching straight into it. I wanted to begin Resilient Culture with a celebration of everything positive that's actually coming about through this year that everyone's describing as the year you want to forget and put in the bin. Actually, it's leading to new forms of positivity and creativity. It's forcing all of us to to think laterally a little bit. I want to circle back to some of the people I introduced right at the top. And if we have Countess Elizabeth Howe with us, I would like to invite her to give a few words on what resilient culture means to her in these very peculiar times. Countess Elizabeth Howe, if you're with us, I do see you.
Yes, I am. I'm here, and I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You are. We can hear you loud and clear.
That's lovely. Well, thank you, Bidisha, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's been able to join us tonight. And how lovely it is to be able to connect, albeit only virtually. And I'm only too thankful that I haven't had to deal with the responsibility of the technology. If I fade in and out, I do apologize, but my connectivity here at home is very limited. So fingers crossed. This year's Milton Keynes Islamic Arts and Culture event comes just at the end of Interfaith Week and gives us a moment to pause and to think about what this actually means. Interfaith Week provides us with the opportunity to experience greater interaction between groups of people and to explore differing viewpoints and to celebrate diversity and also commonality. But what a different Interfaith Week it's been this year, with no face-to-face interaction and a dependence on digital technologies to give us those opportunities. And what we've just seen with the gallery, our little flit through the gallery, is the most extraordinary use of technology to bring things to us, to make them more accessible. I do congratulate everybody who's been involved with that. So this year, Anwar has chosen the theme of resilient cultures. And of course, what more poignant topic could he have chosen, given the challenges which all our communities are facing because of the pandemic? So what do we understand is a resilient culture? My belief is that it's based around the ability of culture to adapt and change when faced by adversity. For each of us, there are different ways of harnessing our inner resilience or that ability to bounce back from the stresses of life. The pandemic has heaped ever more complex challenges upon us, and my thoughts are very much with those whose lives have been directly impacted by COVID. We all face disappointment, loss, and change as part of our everyday lives. By being resilient, it doesn't mean that these difficult moments have gone away, but what it does mean is that we develop the tools to cope with life. These tools, such as random acts of kindness, increase our ability to bounce back. I was touched recently to read the inspirational story of Hassan Akkad. He's an award-winning filmmaker and humanitarian activist who fled the war in Syria 4 years ago and was literally plucked from the Aegean Sea as he was making his way to Europe in 2015. Eventually, he found his way to the UK. And this year, as the pandemic hit London in the spring, he was keen to give back to his community. In Hassad's words, he said, "I did an internet search and saw my local hospital, Whipps Cross, was looking for cleaners. So I started volunteering there as a cleaner. It felt like a direct way that I could contribute to the well-being of my fellow Londoners. It's where I would go myself if I got ill, or my partner, or the families on my road. It was my honor to contribute in some small way." And he goes on to say that his work was much more than about just cleaning. And he explains, "When cleaning, you see people in the ward every day. Lots of them became my friends over the period they were in hospital. I would greet them every morning. We'd chat about the day, do what's possible to make them feel comfortable. It's what I hope someone would do for my loved ones in the same situation." So I think this heartwarming story shows the extraordinary generosity of spirit on the part of Hassad. He had had to leave everything behind when he fled Syria, and yet he still had the will to benefit and help others. He found his own resilience through reaching out to others. I'm sure that you will all have seen the many ways in which communities and individuals have reached out to each other during the pandemic, and MKIAC has very much played its part. Miriam has continued to offer art courses online so as to enable many isolated people to still feel part of a group. Virtual doors have given a platform for many to express their despair, their concerns, and their hopes for the future. The organisation has continued to enrich our lives through the medium of art. Engagement in schools has been crucial, giving a sense of identity and belonging to many who are feeling cut off and alone. The recent recognition from the National Lottery Good Causes is a real reason to celebrate. They congratulate MKIAC for continuing to keep the arts alive through digital means during this pandemic. So what do we understand are the arts? I suppose they can loosely be described as the ideas, customs, and social behaviour of a particular people or society. And one thing is abundantly clear: art is essential in our lives. We will all have spent time during lockdown with a book, a good film, our favourite music, or tried our hand at a creative activity as a way of finding solace from the fear of the pandemic. Recognising the importance of our cultural heritage and celebrating it in myriad ways is one way of supporting ourselves through these trying times. It gives us a vehicle for reflecting our values, for developing our skills, and for bridging the divide between communities. We're surrounded by the arts in a profound way, and for many, the arts are the thing keeping us from losing it in the face of so much stress and uncertainty. In the words of Dr. Sean Duke, the arts are the glue that holds civilization together. So through developing cultural resilience, we can see how our cultural backgrounds, values, language, customs, and norms can help us to overcome adversity. So a special thank you to Anwar and the trustees of MKIAC for giving us hope through this pandemic.
And that leads me perfectly onto our next guest, the High Sheriff of Buckinghamshire, Andrew Farncombe. Welcome. If you would like to say a few words, please unmute and take the floor for your 5 minutes. That's perfect. You're unmuted, as we can see.
I'm on now.
You're on. It's you.
Well, I don't really think I've got 5 minutes worth of words to say. All I would want to say is my gratitude for inviting me to this. I feel very honoured. I'm greatly looking forward to what we're going to see and hear this evening. And I would like to associate myself with Elizabeth's words just now. During my year as High Sheriff, I've been literally astonished by people's resilience. At the beginning of my Shreveport year, I thought, goodness me, what am I going to do now? Everything in the diary evaporated. And I worried that I'd be sitting around twiddling my thumbs. But in fact, what's happened, we've just found different ways of doing things. And in my virtual travels, I've been astonished by people's resilience, their positivity, and seeing the wonderful people that do so much good work with really little thought for themselves. So it's been a funny old year, but I'm not downhearted in the least. I'm buoyed up, as it were, by the response of people, the working together, and the way most people have just sort of got on with it. I find it very heartening.
Thank you very much indeed. And in fact, you've given us the perfect outline as I introduce our next speaker, who's Terry Adams, the Senior Project Manager in charge of diversity at Arts Council England. So we know that there's a wealth of talent and keenness out there. We don't always know how it gets funded, how it gets facilitated, how it's brought from the ideas stage onto the world stage. So if Terry Adams is there and would love to tell us a little bit more about his role encompassing, promoting and delivering Arts Council England's agenda on diversity, equality and inclusion at a time when we're all talking about it and we want to see positive change happen. Terry Adams, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for the invitation. It is good to be here, and it is good to be speaking on behalf of the work that Anwar and his team do. So you will know, but I will say again very briefly, Arts Council England is the development agency for art and culture in England. It is our role to invest in, support and develop art and culture across the country of England. We are funded essentially by government, that's taxpayers' money, so that's your money. And we are also funded from receipts from the National Lottery. So as I say, our aim is really to support, develop and champion the arts and culture in England. And our role and responsibility is to invest in art that reflects the broad and true nature of all who live in England. By that we mean every form of art and culture from every corner and voice of the country is reflected in the work that we fund. My specific role in the Arts Council is to promote our agenda around diversity, inclusion and equality. Now, we all know with the best will in the world, it isn't always possible to fund everything that we would like to fund. We simply don't have the budgets. But what we want to ensure we do is to make sure those funds, the investment that we make is spread equitably across the different art forms, the regions, the cultures, the backgrounds, the languages, the stories, as much as we possibly can with the resources that we have. So we at the Arts Council have in recent years developed what we have defined as the creative case for diversity. And by this, with this approach, with this concept, we aim and hope that the arts organisations and the individuals who seek our investment have in mind that their work needs to reflect, as I say, that notion of the broad diversity and background of the country. So whilst we're not saying what artists, what organisations should provide, they should be mindful that it is open, accessible and inclusive to as wide a range of people as possible. So we go around and we talk to arts organisations, we talk to individuals, we ask them about who it is they're trying to target and get to see their work, and ensure that when we sit down and make our decisions around funding, that we're reflective of all those different voices. You will know that Anwar has been successful in securing project grants now for a number of years. One of the things we are really mindful of what Anwar does in his work, he speaks to an audience that reflects a specific and particular cultural background, but nevertheless has a wide appeal and relevance to the wider region, locality, town, country in which he lives and works. And it is that principle of ensuring that we fund, we invest in good quality work that is maybe specific in its focus, initial background, but nevertheless, it can encompass and embrace people from different backgrounds who may not typically think it is something for them. I know that the arts in the park over the last few years has been an incredible success in terms of attracting audiences and people who may not typically engage in the arts. And I myself went to the Bexley Park exhibition earlier this year, literally I think it was 10 days before lockdown, and that was a marvellous event. I think all who were in attendance and subsequent commentary and testimony for that event spoke to its incredibly high quality. I will end by saying that we at the Arts Council are now about to embark on our new 10-year strategy. And that strategy is called Let's Create. Now, we've moved away from the notion of great art for everyone because we think that concept is well embedded. That was our previous 10-year strategy. And instead, we're thinking about art that has a relevance that is inclusive to everybody. So our 3 core objectives, or indeed outcomes for this new strategy, are to develop creative communities, to develop creative individuals, and to have a country that internationally is seen as culturally creative. Within those 3 outcomes, we have 4 what we described as investment principles. In no particular order, they are environmental responsibility, they are quality and ambition, the third is dynamism, and the 4th is inclusion and relevance. So those will be the principles on which we invest all our resources, our funding in the next 10 years. And we feel that they reflect what we have built on in the past, the strength, the diversity, the excitement of our cultural and artistic offer in this country. And we hope that with this approach that the sector, that's the art and cultural sector, will come behind us and will support this endeavour to really make the notion of creativity in this country, that is one that is truly embedded across the country in individuals, in communities, in places all over. And I think it's fair to say that much of the work that Anwar and his team have done in recent years has to a large degree reflected those notions of creative individuals and creative communities. So we are and have been pleased to support Anwar's work, and we hope that he will continue to do the level and quality of work that he has been doing in the past. And if so, where we can, we will be happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed for that constructive explanation and that look ahead to the next 10 years. And I also wanted to thank you for mentioning the environment in there, because before lockdown began, that's the big thing that was on the horizon, and then all our attention got sucked in by present times. But thank you so very much. And thanks also for that deeper perspective.
Hello everyone, I'm Neha and we are this year's head girl and head boy for Shenley School. We're so sorry that we couldn't be at this event in person and in this call itself, but we really wish we could.
Yeah, good evening everyone. As Neha said, I'm Benji and I'm this year's head boy at Shenley School. Unfortunately we couldn't make it to the event, however we hope that this short video will help cover everything that we would have covered if we were able to attend.
So culture is so important to the arts, and it's also incredibly important in terms of identity and embracing and celebrating our diversity. In this year more than any other, we've all had to show an immense amount of resilience in just our day-to-day lives, but also when it comes to our personal culture and who we identify as. And this is difficult to do. Resilience is a skill that can take up to a lifetime to develop, but we've all been forced to develop it in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. I think culture is so important to us at Shenley in many different ways. I think the most important way with regards to Shenley is that it allows us to focus on culture in a way that students are taught to express themselves. I think culture in terms of expression is a massive thing here at Shenley, and right from year 7 we're taught to be tensile, and tensile is a massive part of your education here at Shenley, and it's so many different ways where you can apply tensile into culture, especially with one of the E's in tensile standing for expression. It means that students are being taught to express themselves, and it comes across in various different ways, and we're also encouraged to express ourselves in all kinds of different ways, whether it's through our speech, our work, our actions. It's very many different ways, and it's definitely a good thing to see.
Throughout lockdown we were encouraged to express ourselves even more than we ever have been. We had all kinds of events and opportunities come through to us to help us do this. We had our Book of Hopes event come through, we had all sorts of Black Lives Matter artwork that was really, really important to see. It was such a tough time for a lot of people, and you know, they could use this to really channel their passion and all their emotions that they were feeling about it and express themselves in the best way possible. And by doing this, they were building their resilience. They were showing how they could keep going and keep pushing through hard times. It was really nice. We also had our learning gallery come through every week, where we had all sorts of opportunities for people to learn and educate themselves, and that was really nice. It was something to have to keep ourselves going throughout difficult times when we were all stuck inside. And it's really important that Shenley did that throughout a time where, you know, we were at home, we're not in that same environment. It was really nice to have that.
Yeah, definitely. I think following on from what Neha said with regards to culture within the arts, I think it was very important for us to have those avenues as students here, because it allowed people to sort of relate to something. And maybe it wasn't just about relating, it was about getting out of a comfort zone. Yeah. Because with culture, everyone has their own culture. And I think it was nice for people to be able to experience the different kinds of culture within lockdown. And this sort of experience allowed people to sort of, like you said, gain that resilience and sort of get them through a difficult time. I mean, we all struggled during lockdown, and I think being able to have these sort of avenues, such as our learning gallery, our Black Lives Matter activities, and our Book of Hopes event, it allowed people to get out and be more themselves and feel a lot more at ease in a very challenging time. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that we're so happy to see students from Shenley Brookham being celebrated, especially like when Benji said, you know, Tensile is used so much in and around school, and we're really taught to express ourselves, and to see that really coming through and the students embracing that, it's really, really nice.
Yeah, it was really nice to see. I think that's all we wanted to cover during this video. We hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening to us, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Let me introduce Abda very briefly and then give over 5 minutes to her. Abda Khan is a lawyer turned writer. Her published novels include Stained and Razia. She's also a speaker, project curator, campaigner, volunteer, mentor, and a Lloyds Bank Women of the Future ambassador. Abda, a huge welcome to Resilient Cultures live on Facebook as we speak. 5 minutes are yours.
Thank you very much. I have no idea how I'm going to top that. Nowhere near as cute as they were. Right, so first of all, I'd like to thank Anwar for inviting me to spend this evening with such wonderful company, and say hello to everybody who might be watching on Facebook. I'm not going to talk about my work particularly. I'm going to talk very briefly about my experience of COVID, actually, which is something Anwar really wanted me to do. And then I'm going to just do a little poem about, which is called Hope, which I've written especially for tonight. So I had COVID right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was a real shock to my system. I am a fit and healthy, then 50-year-old, now 51-year-old, and it was the most poorly I'd ever been in my life. And I think it gave me an opportunity to actually think about a lot of big things like mortality and life and death, and what that really means, you know. And I think that when you're that poorly, luckily I wasn't hospitalized, but nevertheless I was very, very poorly, and to the point where I couldn't walk down the stairs till after 2 weeks, and I couldn't walk around the block after 4 weeks. It does make you think about the bigger picture, and I think it does make you think about what's really important. So I think this pandemic, although it's been incredibly sad, I know people who have lost parents and family members, people close to me. So it's been terrible in that sense, but it's also, I think, maybe has made us want to recalibrate what we think about, what's important to us. And I think that, you know, I often hear this phrase that we're all in this together, or we're all in the same boat, but I really don't think we're all in this together, and I really do not feel that we're all in the same boat, because there are lots of people who suffer disproportionately because of this pandemic, you know, whether it's because of money worries, unemployment, or whether it might be domestic abuse. And as we know, ordinarily 2 women a week are killed shockingly by their partner, ex-partner. During the pandemic or during lockdown, it increased to 5 women a week, which is just shocking. So, you know, some people aren't good with technology, so they can't do this kind of thing that we're doing tonight. They can't have those benefits that we can have. So when people say we're all in this together, I really don't feel that we are all in this together. I think a lot of people have it a lot worse than some of us. But I think that's where the resilience comes in. And I do feel that, I think that something like COVID can give you an opportunity to actually think about not only what makes you happy, but what you can do for others and what you can give to others, and not give for the sake of receiving, but just give, you know, because I think that way lies hope. You know, hope for a better future, hope for better communities. So I think that whilst it's been a terrible experience, and it continues to be right now at the moment, because my daughter works as an NHS ambulance responder and she takes calls every day, and she knows how bad it is, and you know, sometimes she comes home and she talks to me. Nevertheless, I think that we can cling to a little ray of hope in that, you know, perhaps it will change our perspective on the environment, on the world, and on the people who are more disadvantaged than we are. So in that light, I have written a poem for tonight, and it's called Hope. Hope is the tenderness of morning dew on blades of grass and petals of soft hues. Hope is the dawning of a sun-kissed blue sky after the torrential rain has swept by. Hope is the joy that a mother will savour when she holds her baby after the pain of labour. Hope is the overcoming the fear of an affliction when the doctor's findings are gently spoken. Hope is the feeling of not feeling alone when your neighbour checks in on you on his way home. Hope is the joy that touches your soul when a stranger smiles at you for no reason at all. Hope is the feeling of a loved one's embrace that warms your heart on the coldest of days. Hope is the angel that will sit by your side and in your darkest hour lead you to the light. If you feel hope and a sense of belief, then pass it on to every person you meet. For though we are different in colours and faiths, we are all God's children as one human race. Thank you.
Abda, that's absolutely wonderful. Everyone's on mute but clapping, which I actually really like.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite Reverend Alan Wilson to speak. Reverend Alan Wilson is the Bishop of Buckinghamshire, having served in the Diocese of Oxford since 1979 and been Bishop since October 2003. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Bidisha. It's just a joy to be here every year. I used to think you couldn't come up with anything new to amaze me. The virtual gallery, we've got a takeaway this year. It is the most extraordinary achievement. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to what I shall be doing after this, which is really reveling in that in the most extraordinary way. And I love the way in which you said this is not about negativity. It's about looking at the positive things that are possible, even though times, of course, have been very hard indeed. I'm aware that this is not the worst that we've ever had in Buckinghamshire. In 1349, 60% of the population of our county were wiped out by the Black Death. And if you go around the county, you can see the remains of field systems and villages and churches that were just completely wiped out by that experience. Terrible as it must have been. And yet it was faith that rebuilt those communities. And there is a resilience there and a bigger perspective that I think we really need to hang on to, because it would be very easy apart from that to lose hope about where we are. I mean, there's a cartoon I wanted to show you in the New York Daily News, which I'm just showing you now. It does seem like the end of the world, really. And there is the New York Daily News comment on the COVID crisis. And even though I've got a really privileged, we live in lovely countryside with a loving family and a shop at the bottom of the hill and friends locally, you couldn't have a better experience of being banged up than we've had. But I need to be personal and just share that it must be more difficult for Lucy and I than we're willing to let on. We send each other, like a lot of loving couples, silly cards at different times in the year. And on the 14th of February, which of course is Valentine's Day, this was the card we spent each other. And then we went into lockdown. And by the time you get to the 14th of July, which is our wedding anniversary, we sent each other a nice fluffy animal card. And the one we sent each other was that. Now, I think we had a kind of cabin fever really, that's all about. And I think all of us were really feeling those sorts of pressures on us. This is part of a bigger context in which we don't only have COVID, but recession and all the emergences of inequality and climate change coming down the line ahead. That's from a Toronto newspaper. Be sure to wash your hands and all will be well, says the man in the tower block. And we do have to know that there are some very big and fundamental questions about the kind of people we are that this particular crisis has raised. I reread The Plague, Albert Camus, which is all about Iran in 1947. And there's a really interesting review of the book in the London Review of Books. The pestilence is at once a blight and a revelation because it brings the hidden truth of a corrupt world to the surface. It's helped us to revalue people, the people who weren't on our A list, like delivery drivers and shelf stackers and many of our care workers and hospital porters. These are the people who've pulled us through and we really needed. There has been a reversal really of roles in all sorts of ways and a revelation of the inequality at the heart of our society that we don't want to think about. This is a poster from the 1929 election at the time of the great market crash of 1929. And the £10,000 a year and the £1,000 a year and the £250 man a year. And then you have just in the water up to his head, the unemployed man down the bottom. And the man at the top is saying, equality of sacrifice. That's the big idea, friends. Let's all step down one rung. And we have some honest truths to engage with now that perhaps we like to think we didn't and we rather hid from, but we do. And how is faith going to be a resilient resource for us? All kinds of different faith that there are in Buckinghamshire, over 200 different faiths in Milton Keynes alone, a much richer scene than would have been the case 700 years ago. We have enormous resource and enormous amounts in common to help us play our role as people of faith, where we are people of faith, in the rebuilding that now has to happen. I'm going to suggest one way will be to reconnect with our own core traditions and stories, the things which are much bigger than the present emergency. That's a Christian vision of Abraham giving hospitality, Abraham who lies at the root of Muslim and Jewish and Christian faith. We need to connect with those big realities that are so much more significant as resources for a different kind of future than just the latest story or the latest emergency that we get from our news media. There's a big Christian tradition that Jesus said, break bread. Jesus said, baptize people. Jesus said to his disciples, wash your feet. And the value that all of our faith communities have brought in their own different distinctive ways has been about service, about the kind acts that Bidisha was telling us about, noticing people, looking out for our neighbours, doing simple things, not because we have to, but because we notice people and they matter to us in a very special way. And that loving service is absolutely at the heart of what faith communities can bring to the reconstruction of our life in new and better ways as the COVID crisis passes, as indeed it will, responding to need by loving service. That has to be what it's all about.
Thank you so much. I would now like to invite Colin Hambrook to speak. We're edging towards, we have half an hour left, but Colin Hambrook is the founder and editor of Disability Arts Online, an absolutely unique and fascinating journal for the advancement of disability arts and culture that was launched in 2004, dedicated to nurturing and critiquing the artistic practice of disabled artists, writers, and performers, and of course engaging in dialogues such as this one. So Colin Hambrook, if you're with us, please, you have 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Bidisha, and big thanks to Anwar and Musab for inviting me to talk. When I was thinking about resilience, I thought the perfect project to share was a project with one of our associate artists, Letty McHugh, who, as an associate artist, she created a project called Seaworthy Vessel, which demonstrates resilience in all kinds of ways. And perhaps I could share my screen to show some of the images from the project as I talk about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so here we are. Here's the showcase page, and it came about. Letty was looking at a row of large anchors in a scrapyard from the window of a train, and started thinking about the anchors and the ships that they came from, and the parts of a ship wind up in a scrapyard because they've been deemed unseaworthy. So the question came to her mind was, what would happen if we applied the idea of seaworthiness to people? Who would pass the test? So the idea of seaworthiness became a metaphor for resilience, leading to the title of her project, The Seaworthy Vessel. She was particularly interested in exploring the relationship between her great-granddad Billy, who was injured while serving with the Merchant Navy during World War II, and her experience with a multiple sclerosis relapse that affected the function of her hands. When Letty's great-granddad Billy was learning to use his hands again, after his accident, he learnt to knit, and he made dozens of pairs of slippers for his children that took on an almost legendary status in Letty's family history. So she wanted to try a similar repetitive activity to regain confidence in her hands. So she began folding origami boats with the aim of folding 1,000 paper sculptures. What started as a restorative exercise, a making process, became a project that on the one hand served as a testament to her family history, and on the other, inspiring others to take part and to use this simple paper sculpture making exercise as a way of manifesting something you feel proud of, something that you've overcome, or something that makes you feel buoyant to think about. The participatory part of the project is about encouraging people to reflect on and celebrate their own resilience by writing a personal message on a square piece of paper and then turning it into a boat. For Letty, it was a way of commemorating her great-granddad's resilience. She wrote his story on pieces of paper and turned those into a fleet. When I took part in the project, I wanted to commemorate a loved one who had died. Nancy Hayden Smith was someone I'd been very close to in my youth. She died in April this year after a 7-year battle with cancer. When she was first diagnosed, she was given months to live, and it was a great testament to her strength and character that she fought to stay alive for her family for so long. I couldn't go to the funeral because of the restrictions in place. So I wrote a poem I'd written for her and turned it into a paper boat and submitted it to Letty's online fleet. And I'll just scroll through some of the images of some of the boats that were submitted through the Instagram page that she set up, where she had a video letting people know about the project and how to make the paper boat. So Letty she's still collecting paper boats and asking people to submit pages with the hashtag Seaworthy Vessel or I am Seaworthy. And for me as editor at Disability Arts Online, it's been a wonderful journey to support her in realizing her project through encouragement to write about it on her blog. Our artist associateships involve us in contracting disabled artists to connect with the team over a period of time to develop their arts practice and to receive seed funding towards realizing an arts project. submissions to Seaworthy Vessel have been wonderful, and reading other people's stories has brought this piece of work to life. And that I'm really pleased to say that the next iteration of the project will be a workshop with the National Maritime Museum in the new year. So look out for postings, and I'll post some links if you want to find out more about Letty McHugh's artwork. I'll post some links in the chat where you can find the project page on Disability Arts Online, and also she's written a book which is downloadable in a PDF form called Some Days I Am the Sea.
Thank you very, very much indeed. I also want to thank someone who has been with us from the very beginning and who we are receiving lots of very positive messages about. And that is Connie, the British Sign Language interpreter, who has been with us since the very beginning. Apparently, she's completely amazing at, say, people who are writing into us who can understand sign language. She's volunteering her services. So a huge thank you. Thanks so much for sticking with us through all of this. I hope we are understandable and well translatable. Now, we have a video, I believe, from Milton Keynes College, one that was made by the students. I have nothing else on my script, so I'm sort of suspicious that this is going to be super avant-garde, but we will see shortly if we could cue up the video from Milton Keynes College.
Culture is what makes people unique. It creates friendships, families. Without culture, everyone would be the same.
Culture is something that is used to define like a group of people and like their sort of like interests. It's changed a lot over the years, so it's gone from being sort of like punk stuff to sort of like gaming now. Obviously with COVID and everything, it's changed more because more people are finding each other that have like similar interests and like the same sort of like culture. So it's definitely expanded a lot more over the last year nearly now.
How have you been dealing with the world, you know, as it is today with COVID-19?
Well, with COVID-19, it's not been easy on me and my family because before this entire lockdown, my dad had to have a pacemaker placed to keep his heart running.
Right.
And this was before the government had announced that we'd be put into lockdown. And he was a risk because he is a vulnerable person now. He's retired, and for me, it put a huge risk for him if I got COVID-19, and it would have easily placed him in intensive care. So the only reasonable, logical option for me was to do the best I can when following the government's guidance and keeping my dad safe from harm.
It's been a long, hard couple of months for most people. You know, not being able to see family members, not being able to see friends for a decent while. But you know, on the positive side, it's been a good chance to polish up some skills, like programming, that a lot of people have got into, and other stuff like cooking even, which I personally got into, and I think I've done a pretty good job at it. And yeah, it's also been a chance to catch up with family, which, you know, you may or not have been, you know, talking to as much before, or even be seeing for some, you know, older kids like university people and stuff. So yeah.
I would very much like to introduce someone whose work I absolutely love. Maida Noor is an artist, a British Pakistani artist who takes a modern approach to traditional Arabic calligraphy. She plays with colour and form, balancing composition with detailed application of mixed paints. Her paintings carry deep, positive messages of peace and unity and break cultural boundaries. Maida, if you'd like to join us, we would love to hear from you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the invitation. Can I just say it has been absolutely incredible listening to all the amazing people this evening. So thank you so much for all the encouraging words and sharing the inspirational stories with me and with everybody. So I feel honored to be here this evening to be able to share my experience as a full-time artist and how the pandemic affected my work and how I was able to get back on my feet again. So it started, my work is very much based on my experience with people face to face, and also offering workshops and teaching. So a lot of my workshops got cancelled in the beginning, and I was reduced, like my physical activity was reduced to be indoors all the time. And I think for me, the biggest challenge was my emotional and mental health, because as an artist, I have to be in a very healthy space to be able to be productive and to be able to create artwork. I think that was the biggest challenge for me, to be able to overcome my own emotional and mental health. So I'm able to not only help myself, but to help other people and provide them the art therapy. And I realized, the first thing I realized, that I'm blessed to have art as my main medium to express myself. And as we all know, that art is also a big source of therapy as well. So I wanted to use that and express myself, and also help other people to take advantage of the fact that art actually heals and is a way of therapy, and you know, to eliminate the negativity and, you know, get some positivity into your life.
Thank you so very much indeed, and for that powerful examination of the link between nature and creativity and mental health, and being in a situation where you're thrown back on yourself, but how you have to look after yourself at the same time as looking after others, and being in a fit state to look after others and to create. We are exactly at 7:20, so thank you very much also for keeping us bang on track. I want to bring in the Mayor of Milton Keynes here, Andrew Geary. He's been in public political life since he was first elected to Milton Keynes Council in 2002. I don't want to take up your time, so Mayor of Milton Keynes, Andrew Geary, the floor is yours.
Bidisha, you're not taking up my time at all. Believe you me, I do wish I could stay. One of the joys of being there is that I get to see so many different aspects of life in Milton Keynes, and that I have to go to be and to open the Women Leaders Gala Awards non-dinner this evening at 7:30 is just, you know, an example perhaps of how I attend two things on one evening that are very different but both very rewarding. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with you this evening. Yes, you were right. I was indeed going to be summing up, and I will do just a little bit, if I may, of summing up on what I've heard so far. I know that I shall miss some of it, and I'm deeply sorry about that. But I do want to begin by doing, as so many other people have, but I don't think it can be said often enough, and thanking Anwar, somebody who I nearly got in trouble with the last time we were together on a Zoom event because I called him an old friend. I call him an old friend in the sense that I've known him for, as you say, pretty much the whole time I've been on Milton Keynes Council, and nothing to do with his age or mine, because it probably reflects badly on both of us if we do that. Where do I begin? By trying to sum up this evening. The word resilience has perhaps taken on a whole new meaning during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's taking on a fresh meaning this evening from what I've heard through some very, very inspirational people talking. You know, my dear father, who, like me, is a licensed lay minister in the Anglican Church and has recently become a church warden at the age of 78, once said to me, if you want to make a good preacher a really bad one, turn them into a bishop. Alan, I think you have done a wonderful job of absolutely displaying that what a load of rubbish he sometimes spoke. You know, my father taught me many, many really decent and true things. You've done a really good job this evening of proving him wrong on that one, and I'll take great delight in telling him so tomorrow morning. From the children at Shenley End School, wow, you know, I mean, they never seem to amaze, do they? I have two children of my own, one of who's just left school and was done out of doing his GCSEs this summer, and I can tell you he was one of probably the few who was really pleased to be done out of doing his GCSEs, because he's not an academic at all. I have a daughter in year 11 who is really struggling at the moment at home, self-isolating because of virtual learning, because of COVID in her school, and is learning virtually again, having done it for 6 months. And I can tell you we're desperately worried about the exams, but just to watch the resilience of that 15, rising 16-year-old has kind of given me a really kind of fresh insight on life and to actually how we can learn things from the younger generation. Who else can I sort of speak on tonight? I mean, I'm going to leave the penultimate word, I think, before I share something with you that I had prepared, not an original, but one that I want to share because I think it speaks this evening. But I'm going to leave the penultimate word for Abda and that poem that you wrote. It touched me for numerous reasons. I have to say that this is the second event in a week that I've attended where I didn't think I'd kind of need to have a handkerchief in my pocket at hand, and you've proven me wrong. Abda, if you are willing, could you somehow ensure that the words of that poem are sent to us all afterwards? Because I want to read it again, I want to look at it again, because I think that resembled the word hope in a whole new and fresh way, in a way that I've never heard it demonstrated before. And yes, I am going to say it. I told you whether I would or not, but actually, I'll tell you why it spoke in two ways to me. One, because the hope coming through it, having heard that from somebody who had COVID and has come out the other side and sees positive hope for the future. And laugh at this by all means if you want to. It also spoke to me because as a farmer, one of the things I rely on most and one of the tools I use the most is my sheepdog. And one of my sheepdogs is called Hope. And I can tell you that I'm never going to look at Hope quite in the same way ever again, having heard that message this evening. When you described, and I can't remember the exact line, I did try and scribble it down, but it was just too quick and I couldn't do it. When you described hope as that person who sits next to you and all others abandon you or something in that sense, do you know what? Sometimes that's exactly what farmers do when the closest thing they've got is their dog. And you couldn't have summed it up better. It was absolutely powerful. It really was. So thank you for that. Thank you to everybody who's contributed this evening. And thanks to those who are still to contribute and that I'm unfortunately going to miss when I have to leave in about 5 minutes. What I want to share with you is the words of, yes, it is a poem. It's also a hymn that we would use in the Christian church, because I can tell you that one of the things I've missed most over COVID, I'm actually a member of our church choir, as well as being a licensed lay minister, and that opportunity to join together in corporate worship was given back to us when lockdown finished. Sadly, we've not been able to sing, and singing is something that I have missed the most. These words were written by a fairly modern hymn writer, a guy called Fred Kahn, in the 1960s. And he wrote some words that I would have chosen and used at my civic service had I been able to have one. And I do still hope and pray that actually before the end of my mayoral year, I will be able to have a civic service. And he wrote these words, which, yes, are poetry, but I think also, I hope, speak for the hope that we all have tonight and as we move forward, hopefully, into the dying weeks and months of this pandemic. For the healing of the nations, Lord, we pray with one accord, for a just and equal sharing of the things that earth affords. To a life of love in action, help us rise and pledge our word. Lead us forward into freedom. From despair, your word release, that redeemed from war and hatred, all may come and go in peace. Show us how through care and goodness, fear will die and hope increase. All that kills abundant living, let it from the earth be banned. Pride of status, rule or schooling, dogmas that obscure your plan. In our common quest for justice, may we hallow life's brief span. Thank you very much indeed for inspiring me this evening, for the time that I've spent with you, and I hope the rest of your evening goes as well as it has so far.
I want to introduce Tina Jones, who will herself be introducing Vicky Mensah. I'll just introduce Tina first, and then the stage is all yours. Tina Latifah Jones is probably best known for her work running the Milton Keynes-based HIV charity Chica Tamas Support Services, which was founded in 2007. As well as this, Tina is heavily involved with the Association of Ghanaians in Milton Keynes. So a long-time MK resident and supporter. Welcome. The floor is yours. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you're on mute again. Oh, you're back.
Yes, I think it's better now. Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Anwar, for putting this fantastic event together. And like everyone has said, the theme this evening, Resilient Cultures, is just perfect for the season that we are in. When COVID started, myself as a young, I like to say I'm still young, young African girl born in Ghana around the time of military rule, when food was rationing, there was no electricity sometimes. And as a young child, watching some of my older cousins and aunties still trying to study using a lantern, a kerosene lantern. And so when COVID came and we got the news of lockdown and trying to go to supermarket to get some toilet rolls, and it was all ration, eggs were ration. The flashbacks was just crazy. And I had to explain to my children how privileged they are that even in COVID, we still had the power. We had electricity, we had internet. They could study virtually. How amazing is that? So like Abda have said, hope, we just have to hold on to hope, because regardless of what situation we are in, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And coming back to the BAME community as a Ghanaian young lady who has so much passion for Milton Keynes, we as the Association of Ghanaians in Milton Keynes immediately got together speaking to our families all over across Milton Keynes, and some people as resilient as we are, having come out of the military coups and all the challenges that some of our African countries face, we just gathered the courage in the midst of like the pandemic. We were able to support some of the vulnerable communities. And I have here with me Vicky Mensah from Awake to Know Africa, who is also part of the Association of Ghanaians in Milton Keynes. I have a number of my trustees watching online on Facebook, Mr. Ben Kome, who is actually a mental health nurse who has been on the front line. We have Tina Kronji watching on Facebook, who is also a social worker and on the front line. Myself, a social worker and a foster carer as well, having been supporting children in care in such a complex environment with the pandemic, and trying to explain to them why they couldn't go out to the shops just to buy a sweet, or they couldn't go to the park, especially in the early days of the pandemic. So Vicky is here with a lovely poem that Vicky wrote. Vicky ran her own cultural organization called Awake to Know Africa. And without hesitation, she decided that she's going to write this poem right from scratch and read it for us tonight. So thank you very much, Vicky, and thank you everybody for watching both on Zoom and Facebook. Vicky.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Tina, as well. When Tina called me to say, Vicky, this is what's going to happen, it's about culture, I was, hey, that's my zone. I'm very passionate about culture. And looking back during the lockdown, I was not supposed to go out, but the passion and the caring spirit just forced me to go out shopping with my younger children. Normally we wake up as early as 6:30, try to find where we can get toilet tissue, hand wash everything, and then put it in the car, take it to the community, and just start distributing to those who may need our help. So it was a perfect time when you asked me to join in. And then looking back, I just decided to write something. And the title of the poem is Yes, Together. Yes, Together. Look at you, still standing after being knocked down and thrown out. Look at you, still drumming, kreketenke, soya. After being picked, plucked, and prodded out of your comfort zone. Still standing, yes, together. Look at you, still dancing, dancing like a queen, dancing like a king, and singing like a star. After being attacked by defeated coronavirus. Look at you, love, still here, and hopefully after it all. Still standing, yes, still standing. Look at us together. Lockdown, but not knocked down. Yes, together we stand. Yes, together we care. Yes, together we embrace. Together we move on. Look at us all together, standing. Thank you.
I don't know what I can possibly say to top that. I'm completely and utterly speechless. Tina Jones, thank you so very much for your words. Vicky Mensah, I want that poem. I want it right now. And I also love your performance ability. Your words and your performance are just that shot in the arm that we need to keep on going, I think, and to not let the grindingness of all of these months push us down. Absolutely wonderful. That poem should be written in 10-foot high letters and painted up in colorful words all over town. Thank you very much indeed. Samira Dinan has Arabic, Berber and African roots. She's based in Amsterdam and she writes and composes songs for her band. Samira, if you're with us, we know you're battling against the deadline of the babysitter. So we very much hope that you're here. No more words from me. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me all the way from Amsterdam to the UK, my first performance in the UK. And yeah, I have a 2-month-old baby girl at home waiting for me. I'm in my parents' house and my mom is babysitting at my place. But normally I would have been now in the Sahara of Morocco. Like every year I'm performing there in a big festival with musicians from Mali, from Algeria, Morocco, Europe. But all these kind of events, they don't take place because of COVID, of course. And I'm also, yeah, always connecting to the communities in Morocco, the musicians and the young artists, and always try to invite them also to Holland to perform here. And for them, it's even more difficult these times. Like in Holland, we have a good social security system. Even as an artist, you can get some support. But there, yeah, they totally rely on themselves or on family. And so what we did, we made a little video with musicians from Morocco, the border of the Sahara Desert, and with musicians from Holland, from France. And yeah, we try to spread the message that culture connects, and also like to think back of the days that there were no borders, like the nomads. They were actually first migrants. Like there was no yeah, fixed place to stay. You always were yeah, on the road. And for now, like in these COVID days, we are stuck at home, and we so appreciate the value of yeah, being on the road, being away, to have this freedom, and to really appreciate this. And I don't know if we can show a little bit of this video. There is us with our band.
We have a little changeover now as we have a video from Denby School. The students of Denby School have made this video on resilient cultures.
That's the way different cultures have coped with the COVID-19 crisis since March, and we came up with a guide on how some people can find help through it, on how to survive the lockdown second one. And so our Year 12 students have been looking at the response from the pandemic and all these different faiths around the world and how they're going to cope with their prayers and individual prayers that they have to do. And so we created a set of tips on how to survive that and just thrive through the lockdown, since a lot of people like to be within their church or mosque, etc.
So what we've learned so far is that it has become necessary to find new ways to receive comfort and provide connections through faith, because I think that's really important. This crisis has a political impact. We must learn the lessons from the pandemic to improve our societies as a whole. Socioeconomic inequality shape health risks. This means that there should be nationwide change in social and public health policies to support the most vulnerable groups after the crisis. The lack of physical contacts could have a psychological impact on people, especially when grieving, for example. Or Adrian Barrett, the Vice President of the Australian Funeral Directors Association, tells us. There's a lot to learn from the Sikh community on how to actively support one another. Religious gathering and services are being suspended across the world as faith communities work to comply with new restrictions. This has led to new ways of worshipping. Communities work to comply with new restrictions. This has led to new ways of worshipping. Cancellations of church services and mass, suspension of prayers and daily activities at mosques and prayer halls, and limiting weddings and funerals. Many places of worship have provided their services online, such as the Anglican Church in Sydney, which recorded a video of Good Friday and Easter Sunday church sessions for believers to watch from the safety of their homes. Jewish people were advised to not to contact others to join them for Passover. Many festivals are held virtually. For example, the Ramadan Tent Project held that virtually this year. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey have advised Muslims to pray at home. In Kuwait, a mosque changed the traditional call to prayer to pray in your own home rather than usual comes prayer. It can be difficult to maintain the sense of community at the heart of many religions for people who are isolating or without being able to gather to celebrate festivals. Interestingly, some have found the experience reinforce their faith by creating the opportunity for believers to reflect on the core message of their beliefs. Overcoming great challenges and difficulties is part of the history of many faiths, such as Judaism, Islam, and Christianity.
So how to help yourself. We've researched many examples of religious providing advice on how to keep one's faith alive during lockdown. We've been inspired by the story of Carol in Kenya, who said that having to work to stay connected with her church fellowship group has had its upsides. It has brought them even closer than before. So there's some tips on how to stay connected and practice faith during the new lockdown. One of them could be use online support such as counselling or mindful apps. Some organisations provide religious counselling and other services online or over the phone, such as the Lebanese Muslim Association in Australia. This helps believers still feel connected to their faith and religious community. Or another thing could be that you can use social media to keep in touch, like Snapchat or FaceTime with your friends or WhatsApp groups, etc. So younger believers should help their elders to use Zoom or house party to set up virtual groups of prayers, for example. It can also be a great way of spending religious festivals safely. This might become necessary around Hanukkah and Christmas time. Some of our own churches have already set this up, such as Winners Chapel International. So also you could spend some time to reflect on your beliefs. This could help to prioritise your well-being during the lockdown and foster better understanding.
So how to help others? We have been inspired by the response from the Sikh community to the pandemic. The Sikh UK action plan was put in place during the first lockdown to adhere and sometimes go further than government guidance at times. The action plan put in place safety measures in Gurdwaras, from worshippers bringing their own scarves and parnas to NHS posters hung around the temples. We've also realised that the health crisis has revealed a deeper social one, following in the example of the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women, which will review the systematic inequalities of the state and provide a post-crisis recovery plan. We would like to see concrete action taken by our government to foster equality in health. The Sikh community in Derby prepares 350 meals a day throughout lockdown. The duty to serve the community is central to the Sikh faith, but we were impressed by the fact they aim to support their whole town, not just their own community. They also created the Help the NHS campaign and made PPE for NH staff. In Milton Keynes, St Miss Woods also participated in assembling PPE for the MK hospital staff. We now know the importance of PPE for the protection of the population overall, and we would like to see this effort replicated during the second lockdown. We want to promote solidarity by buying groceries for our vulnerable neighbours and checking up on them. Be aware of people with hidden disabilities in the school who might be struggling with the new regulations and ensure they are supported, such as making sure not to invade their personal space. It seems fundamental to promote public health throughout our society. The crisis has demonstrated that it takes everyone to improve the overall health of our country. Promote compliance to the government's guidelines, as in washing hands, wearing a mask, only go out for essentials, avoid large groups / gatherings. We have noticed that most apps and websites have information pop-ups as well. We would like to see the same thing added to the Denby website. We would like to create a petition to ensure the government learns from this crisis and works to improve the public health of all British citizens.
I would like to invite now Simon Poulter, who I know enjoyed the music because he said so on a message that flashed up. Simon is an artist and curator with a national profile in devising new work with creative technology. He's worked as a commissioned artist and a curator in so many places that are on my list that I can see that he's actually worked up and down the country and from the side to the other side of the country. It will be easier for me to list the places he has not been commissioned by. Simon Poulter, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. In fact, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Marcus Romer, who's going to take us through the presentation.
Brilliant,
thank you very much for inviting us. So, Marcus.
Because that's what I need to do first. That's going to be the right way. I promise we'll do this in under 5 minutes.
Great.
Along with Sophie Meller, Simon Poulter and myself, we are in fact Mutiny Studios. And when the world turned upside down, and it looked a little bit like this in March, our worlds were turned upside down as creative practitioners and individuals. But we've been working together and really consistently. I'm based in Cambridge and Simon and Sophie live in Plymouth, which is not exactly around the corner, but we've been working online right the way through. And we've made some films, which we made one this time also for MKIAC, which was Dr. Hamid Manji, which was voiced by Sacha Darwin and again drawn by Simon. And this was where we were telling the stories of the pandemic. We were telling the COVID stories from the front line. And this was Dr. Hamid Manji from Milton Keynes Hospital. And we shared that video with you a couple of times ago on this particular MKIC Facebook group. We've also worked with an R&D project in the summer this year, and there we worked again with actors and with performers and writers, and we built an entire world on this gaming platform called Roblox. and we have actors there. We also commissioned writers, and we did a piece around Black Lives Matter, commissioned by Roy Williams, and we were able to perform that and work in this Roblox space that Sophie Mellor had built. It's an extraordinary world that we were able to take place in.
I want to introduce Amber now. She is a program tutor and artist at PSTA, an artist, designer and teacher. She graduated from the extremely prestigious Central St. Martin's School of Art before studying for her master's at the Princess School of Traditional Art. So she weaves together her own teaching and her own practice and creativity. Amber, thank you for being so patient. Over to you.
Thank you, Bidisha, and thank you, everybody. It's been inspiring and uplifting, and I feel slightly unprepared. So I'm speaking to you all from my studio space. So this is where I kind of do design work, I draw, I paint, and I make. And I know in this day and age I should have done lots of screen sharing and stuff, but I'm a bit of a traditionalist, so it's been a very steep learning curve for me. I found on one level I found this whole kind of resilient culture interesting, because it feels as though there's been a renewed interest and value put back onto the arts and the crafts. People are realizing that there's so much satisfaction to be gained when you use your hands, your head and your heart, and you create work from within. So I really do appreciate seeing that kind of shift in attitudes and value for the handmade pieces. Also, I'm hoping that this situation will make us re-examine our relationship with Mother Earth, because she is teaching us a big lesson at the moment, and it really is a huge wake-up call. On a very personal level, I've been fortunate enough to come to my studio to work on my design projects, commissions. I'm missing, what I am noticing is that people aren't willing to pay up front. For some reason, they seem to think that, royalties will work, even though we're working as individual small artists. Unfortunately, we are not able to have a public open studio, but we're doing a virtual one, so that affects all the makers' sales. So that's another big punch. I have found that I'm doing much more teaching now. So I've had Zoom geometry classes and found students waking up at 2 in the morning from Australia to attend. I'm starting design classes. Well, I'm doing, now that Karabakh has calmed down, I'm doing classes in Baku regularly. They're challenging, but they work. On the MA course in traditional art, we started off with Zoom, but we're back in the classroom. But it has, the Zoom classes have been a challenge. It feels like exhausting not being able to, I don't know whether it's smell, I know we're not allowed to touch, but it's been quite an effort for all of us, I think. And it has been really exciting to be in the classroom situation, even though we are all kind of masked and doing the 1-2 meter distancing. So it's, I think on one personal level, yeah, I've been able to do some very interesting work. It's been strange to see how this has affected my work. I had no intention to produce COVID work, but I am seeing how things like, geometry paintings that have a very kind of specific sense of order have just all gone out of the window. I find myself wanting to draw trees and nature and really enjoying, relishing it in a different way. And I'm hoping that I can keep working, but maybe generate some income instead of like museums and organizations telling me that they're suffering.
I'm now going to invite in our last speaker of the evening, artist Georgie. I don't know why I'm calling you Georgie because your name is Georgie up on Zoom, but actually the formal name is Georgina Henry. I do apologize for that, that lack of formality. You've been incredibly patient with us, hearing everybody. Georgina Holden was born and raised in North London, moved to Milton Keynes over 30 years ago. So I think you've earned it. Writing was encouraged from an early age, but Georgina has only recently returned to writing poetry. However, in her day job, she lectures in design and innovation at the Open University. So there's that wonderful balance of words and images and inner artistic creation and outreach and helping. Welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I much prefer Georgie. Only my mother-in-law calls me Georgina. Well, I was asked to talk about innovation by Anwar, and so I'm not sure whether what I'm going to say is really what you want to hear, but I'll say it anyway, and you can take what you want from it. I've been working at the Open University in distance design education for a long time now, coming up to retirement. And I've been using technology to teach for decades. As you might imagine, this year has actually been quite a good year for the OU in terms of we've suddenly got lots more people wanting to study with us. But we're never ever complacent at the Open University. We're constantly questioning about how we might make education more inclusive and help communities to become more resilient. So this year it's been fun. We've found some new ways to engage with students. We planned an exhibition virtually. We chickened out of going 3D. Well done to Musab. It was a step too far for us. We just did something 2D. We also held a virtual summer school, which was really brilliant. We were able, because of the technology, where we would normally have a few students actually come onto the campus and help us with our exhibition, or we might try and have a summer school perhaps in London or somewhere. We were able to have people from all over the place. We had someone in the Isle of Lewis, someone else in the south of Spain, all helping to plan the exhibition that we ran. When we talk about resilience in design, we're usually talking about finding ways to create new futures that are about rebuilding rather than destroying the world around us, much as Amber says, looking after the earth. But it's also, as we've been saying, about uncertainty, about being able to cope with uncertainty that life throws at us. And as Abda said earlier, we don't have an equal society, and some groups suffer disproportionately just because of their life situation or their cultural heritage or their race. And so there are many questions that we're working on. So I wrote this poem, which is really about finding commonalities and celebrating difference. So I'll read it now. Your history is my history. Though my ancestors were not dragged in chains from their homes, nor loaded onto ships and sold like cattle, nor worked till death for the fortunes of others, raped and flogged. My lands were not robbed of their riches, nor my heritage trashed, nor my boundaries set by the straight edge of a ruler. My forefathers were not enticed to this country to be spat at and abused. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish, nor detained and deported because citizenship has become a movable feast and not all are welcome at the table. But through these acts, my history and yours are intertwined. Your loss, my benefit. Your grief, my shame. So tell me the truth of your pain. Talk to me of your ancestors, your people, the architects and artists, musicians and mathematicians, engineers, scientists and philosophers, the wonders and achievements of your past. Fill my mind with new stories. Let us mourn and celebrate together, for your history is my history.
Thank you, everyone, every single speaker. I don't want to go through the list to eat up more time, but I think we would all like to thank Connie, who is doing the British Sign Language interpretation, You have to now translate your own thanks, but we are so grateful. You've given your time for free. You've listened to every word. This has been exercise for you, brain exercise and body exercise. We're so grateful. And I think we'd all like to thank Anwar. Your spirit amazes me. Your ability to keep on trucking is incredible. I think the first time anyone meets you, they think, is this guy for real? Is he really going to put on an enormous festival, a huge exhibition? And then sure enough, you do it year after year. Don't know how, and people come. So thank you. And thank you, Moshab, for keeping all the technicals going. I do apologize for the slow start right up front. I've been Bidisha. You've been amazing. This has been Resilient Culture. Let's say goodbye to each other. Let's say goodbye to Facebook Live and move on and carry on and greet each other on the other side of all of this.